Incremental Greetings. Today I'm going to react to this video from James B. in Experimental Learning channel. Incremental Writing commentary, the first one. He has a series of 4 videos. That's the first one. And what I know is that he is a very proficient SuperMemo user, or was. He now uses RemNote. I'm not sure if he keeps using SuperMemo. That was uploaded 3 years ago. So yeah, let's see what he has. I will try to add my 2 cents. I think he has some commentary. Is in voiceover. So I think this will have a better quality than usual, the videos I reacted to. So perhaps I have less to add. Let's check that.
Hi guys. So I've been thinking about doing...
Okay, again, I don't want to hide the other person, so I just shifted my position in the screen. And before I proceed, I already know that A, he's using a virtual machine. He runs Linux and has a virtual machine running Windows. At the time of the recording, Windows 10.
An incremental reading stream or video for a long time, just where I basically open SM, go through my queue, and basically people can just watch sort of what someone who's been using SM for a while actually does day to day. But I've also been kind of reluctant to make that kind of video just because it's very difficult to make this kind of content interesting and engaging for people who are watching. And I think,
well, for me it's very easy to be engaged with those kind of videos. But yeah, the average guy is, I don't care about what you do in your session.
a large sort of component of that is due to the fact that incremental reading, doing spaced repetition items, it's all kind of an internal process for the learner. So it's not very easy for someone to sort of think aloud while they're doing incremental reading and make it interesting for the people watching. But what I thought I'd do is try and take inspiration from those wonderful Call of Duty commentaries that I grew up on as a kid. And I'm going to try and commentate the process where I can, and where there are periods where I'm just not talking at all and I'm just focused on reading.
There are limitations, because if you're verbose, explaining your thoughts, this is cognitive load, this already changes the session. So you're not going to do exactly what you do. But if you do what you usually do while using SuperMemo, people will have no clue what you're doing, unless you stop after that and then you do a voiceover, which more or less is what he does in his videos.
Reading or taking extracts or creating items or whatever, I'll go back during the editing process and add some commentary and try and give you some insight into what was going on in my mind. So yeah, today I'll just be focusing on topics. I think I set the sorting.
Before he proceeds, okay, something I noticed. So he wants to create integration with ShareX. That's an app you can install in Windows. I think this would work within the virtual machine. And the motivation is to get GIFs. 3 blue, 1 brown, each one YouTuber. Yes, with videos you will want at least some sections of the video as a GIF, because it's explaining something visually. You don't require sound. Then SuperMemo, the GIF is not well supported. It will be visual. If it's large, the file size is large, it will be very, very badly rendered, which will defeat the purpose of using it. Then I also see he uses tasks here and there. He has some concepts that he hasn't have much, like design serendipity, just 12. This looks like one single article and extracts. Yeah, but let's proceed.
Thank you. Purely to topics, so...
Okay, only topics. I think that is because, yes, for the sake of the video.
I'm just going to be doing reading because I find watching people do their items pretty boring. And I don't want you guys to endure that. So that's about it. So
I want to see your items and how you do your item repetitions. as well.
So without further ado, I guess I'll just get into it. All right.
The color combination is super awkward. So this brownish color that he modified, and then you have, I think that's the built-in color, or looks very similar to the extracted color. And then the background is white, while you use a dark theme. At least it's good to know that he doesn't care much about aesthetics, which is a good thing. The only thing I care is if it's readable, because of the color contrast. Other than that...
So this was the first session back.
That is exactly. So this is not real time. So it's just slightly sped up in this case, and then you listen to voiceover. So have this in mind.
Doing incremental reading after perhaps a month or so, where I did.
Then what happens here in Super Memo, when you have this styling, sometimes because of the many limitations that Super Memo has, is that carries over the styling, because the tag has not been properly closed, the HTML tag, I mean. That means that if you want to add text right after, you'll carry on the same styling. So the traditional clinical blah blah blah, there's actually not in the text, is his own words, even though it looks like it was extracted. If you want to avoid this, select this text, Ctrl-Shift-1.
Basically hardly any incremental reading or incremental writing or anything else with Super Memo. I basically just focused on programming and tried to get my items finished, which I didn't always do.
Usually never. After some weeks of using Super Memo, you will never again finish your ascending queue, even for items. And if you do, you're doing some skewed use of incremental reading. Not that it's wrong, and you should avoid it. Is that it's not how it's meant to be used in the full-fledged incremental reading.
So it seems like the last time I'd used SM, or perhaps in the period when I was using SM quite heavily, a month or so ago, I had made a bunch of extracts about the explore-exploit problem. So they are going to feature pretty heavily during this session.
So he added this to solve the issue of people receiving inferior treatment, and then he makes the extract. Also, what I noticed is that he did already 3 extracts in the same repetition. So he's not following the one action, one memory, one action. But again, based on the title, Explore versus Exploit, perhaps he's in a session that he wants to focus on only this topic, and this topic only. Which is slightly processed already. I see some children applied done already, and he has 100 and something, which is, assuming he did not split, which I'm assuming, everything here has been done manually. This means he has read quite a lot already, but he still has a lot longer to go to fully process the article.
And I guess I should probably briefly explain what exactly is the explore-exploit problem. It basically refers to problems where you have to balance resources, for example time, between exploring new options, trying to find a new best option.
By the way, that is a massive paragraph. Oh my god.
And exploiting the best option you've already found to gain some sort of value or benefit. And basically the canonical example of this is the multi-armed bandit problem, which basically refers to a casino which contains a bunch of slot machines, and you have to...
So he did he went slightly back of his selection, but this extract is massive. Interesting to see if he just do multiple layers of this extract.
To allocate your money between slot machines to try and sample each slot machine and find out which one has the best win-loss ratio, basically. And you need to find a balance between trying new slot machines and just putting your money into the slot machine that has given you the greatest expected value so far. So obviously this has many applications in the real world, like in clinical trials, also learning, of course. You've got to balance your time between searching for new exciting areas that you can learn about and searching for new learning, of course. You've got to balance your time between
What he's going to do here? No?
searching for
He just navigated to that element manually, I think. So he did not... Well, he right-click, I don't know.
new.
But this looks like those line breaks were not present before. Let me check the... Oh yeah, it's completely different one, yeah. It's below here, where you see the progress bar of YouTube. It's the topic, and then he goes to the first child.
Of course, you've got to balance your time between searching for new exciting areas that you can learn about and learning about those areas that you already know to have.
That's a good point. By the way, I'm paying more attention what he does in Super Memo rather than the theory behind the article. Could be that, I'm just a victim of novelty, right? Oh, that's super interesting. Look at this. Let me important read. And every day, very often, I repeat the same thing. And I discover new information, new stuff that I want to learn. But then I import this in Super Memo and sits there unprocessed, waiting me for a review to read that. And I keep importing, and then I don't read anything. So yes, at some point I want to get value of what I wanted to read and learn from. If I always keep importing and repeating the same thing, I'm not going to learn anything, right? I'm going to learn superficially enough when I make the decision, oh wow, based on this, I make the knowledge evaluation, this is a high value, let me import it in Super Memo. Whatever I learn from that, because since I don't process in Super Memo, I will be victim of forgetting. And this kind of happened to me. I had like a honeymoon period in Super Memo, and it led me to import 500,000 not import, but have 500,000 elements in my collection. And I realized, yeah, I have everything I ever want to read, which becomes unmanageable. But I'm not reading anything. I'm investing time on adding more stuff. One quick analogy. So imagine you are single. You want to meet new people. Then you meet some interesting people. I think you are in the same vibe. I'm attracted to you. And I want to get you know better and spend more time with you, but with that person. But then, as I make this decision, I still look for other new people. And the time that I invest on seeking new people is time I don't spend on the people I already wanted to spend time with. And this iteration will be repeating and repeating. At the end of the day, I won't be spending time with people I want to know better, because I will keep not getting to know new people. And it's a never-ending process. So it's a good thought, at least in the learning perspective, especially in Super Memo, that is so easy to import a lot more content that you can ever process.
Useful information in them. Interestingly, it's also a very difficult problem to solve, the explore-exploit problem. I read on...
That's also a good thing, that you can just write the questions you have while you are exploring the text. It's not just limited. I just amend the text before I make the extract. By the way, I have a video on that, because a lot of newbies will just make a verbatim extract. A selection as it is, like if it was a highlight, and I then extract that. And when I see this in isolation, I lost the big picture. I don't understand. I'm lacking context. That's why you should adapt this. Enough, not fully, just enough that you will know, hey, I can read this in isolation, out of context. But as you go through the reading, especially if it's a novel domain that you're not familiar with, you'll have some questions. And it may sound like stupid, but you will also forget your questions. So it's good to know that to leave that. And if you want, you can have just a convention to know, hey, this is mine. So you can use, I don't know, two dashes, two sharps, whatever character you want to use, convention. That, oh, I know for sure that this is my, I added this. Because next time, let's say this was 140 days. So if I did this 140 days ago, it's very likely I have forgotten what I have added or modified myself. So it's a good practice. And eventually, you will apply done to this topic, so this will be gone. It's temporary while you're exploring. So no worries.
Wikipedia that Allied scientists, they airdropped this problem over Germany during World War II to get German scientists to waste their time trying to solve it.
Not that I see this. I think I'm doing the same as he does. So my convention is what I add, especially when there are questions or oof, I need to understand that and so on. It's at the top of the topic, the element that is a topic. If I used AI to do a summary, to rephrase, to add questions, or check the comprehension with questions, the questions are not flashcards, Q&A, necessarily. I also do flashcards with this. If it's AI, it goes to the bottom. So with just a positioning, I already know if it's genuinely mine, if it's the actual source, or if it's AI. Since I follow this convention, anytime I see, oh yeah, this is mine. And it will happen that is really? This is mine? When I did that, I don't remember writing this down.
So that's pretty interesting.
And then why he does the extracts. That is the next iteration. So, usually I will wait for the next repetition to do that. By the way, I want to sleep in between this decision. Then you make an extract because this can be converted to a task if you want, or is hey, I want to continue to pursue this. If I cannot answer this question, what is exploration in the context of computer science? Investing resources in getting information, or as in using information. This could lead to a search online to make other extracts, other imports. Searching my collection, perhaps, not necessarily has to be new. It could be my collection but unprocessed, or perhaps it's even half-baked, it's half-processed, like this article, but not enough that I have still holes. And it happened to be that was one of the holes that was still unprocessed. And while you make the extract, you can assign a different interval. Hey, I know this will take longer. I require more previous knowledge. So I send it to 100 days, 200 days, even a year. Perhaps at the beginning you will say, what on earth, a year? This is stupid. Well, once you have achieved incrementalism, is, well, just a year. Doesn't sound long now. And sometimes, even a year, I fall short. Depends, obviously, on the priorities, that for me this is okay, but it's not, oh, I need to know that before the summer ends, or whatever. Assuming, I think, something I didn't mention by the way, that he's free learning. He's not following any curriculum or does this against his will. He's just free learning.
So that's pretty interesting.
Information you have already acquired. Okay, that was the full. Does it modify the exploitation because you have more information than before? Here's the extract. So in this case it's 6 years. But yeah, you can modify this. And let's see what he will do with this.
I like to make these sorts of items.
Items? Okay. In plain English, not because super memo items, jargon, terminology.
That ask about something fundamental and simple. And my sort of the logic behind that, even though I think right now that I will
Okay, sorry. It's not. I was not paying enough attention to the actual content of the article. In this case, are Q&As. Like this will be converted exactly into items, into flashcards. It's not those questions that are, hey, let me explore that. Okay. Even though what I said is actually true, it was not in this context, but it's exactly the same. That's why usually you'll sleep on it and do it some other day in the future, not right away. Unless it's super crucial that I need to solve this, I need to know this for my job as soon as possible. Then in this case, I will do it.
like to make these sorts of items that ask about something fundamental and simple. And my sort of the logic behind that, even though I think right now that I will definitely remember these items, and so perhaps you'd say, well, there's no point in making the item. The logic behind making the item anyway is that if you get an item correct in SM, every time you are shown it, you will only
Get an item correct, I will phrase it as recalling the item, the answer successfully.
be shown it 6 times, perhaps over a lifetime.
That's a good point. So even if in incremental reading, at least in super memo, how it is, assuming you don't have an outstanding queue that accumulates, you do the repetition. The same day it becomes outstanding, assuming this, that it's the best case possible, is not reality. That means that even if I create an item that happens that I will remember anyways, so I didn't need the artificial repetition in super memo, yes, I will have wasted some time, but I will have done like 6 or 7 repetitions in my lifetime, or let's say 3 decades, is how SuperMemo calculates that, 3 decades. Because above that, could be you do 1 extra repetition at 50 years or 60 years. But it will be none or 1. So we can simplify that 3 decades equals for the rest of your lifespan, unless you're a vampire. And how much you spend by repetition? A few seconds. Let's say 10. This question can be answered in 10 seconds, more or less. So yeah, I'll have invested a minute of my life. It's not that as a big deal. And if it happened that I generally forgot that, hey, happened likely that I did the card. It's like insurance. That, hey, I'm paying like a monthly fee. In this case, will be a fee that I pay 6 times in my life. But it's like I want to guarantee that I memorize that. So even if I think that, yeah, for instance, in this apartment, it's very unlikely that I will have, I don't know, fire or whatever that can destroy the building. It's very tiny. It could just happen 6 times in my lifetime that happened in this apartment. But yeah, it's like an insurance. If it happens that I forget it, that the building is destroyed, hey, I have the insurance. If it happens that, oh, this was very basic and I think that it's fundamental, it has to be there. In 5 years, I forget it, hey, that's your insurance. Now it's a reminder, hey, you have forgotten this basic thing. That was very unlikely, but perhaps because of memory interference, whatever that may be, you have forgotten it.
Which is such a trivial investment in terms of time.
Yeah, that's more or less the summary. Investment in time. So more than insurance could be an investment, yeah. But the same is more or less the same analogy.
To remember such an important and fundamental fact that I always think that it's worth to sort of solidify the fundamentals of a subject. And I think that probably differs with the approaches of many other people. And part of it comes down to perhaps what algorithm you're using. For example, if you're using an algorithm that does give you a higher rep load, even if you get every repetition right over a lifetime, then you're going to be more cautious in terms of which items you make.
Exactly. Before FSRS, it was not available at the time of the recording. That was 3 years ago. Now you could do rest repetitions if you use Anki. Still more than if you use Super Memo. But without this discussion. Is if I do more repetitions, then it's not about a minute of my life. It could be 5 minutes of my time overall. So it's to follow the analogy. If it's an investment, I can do the same investment, but that I'm being taxed a higher percentage, or I have an interest rate of a higher percentage as well. So yes, perhaps by average, if I invest in many different flashcards, I will still get a net benefit. But it's more likely that those individual flashcards that are for the basic and fundamental, I actually lose. I will win in the average. So the average will be slightly lower because of some individual losses. But take that in consideration. I did that in Anki, by the way. I'm back in the day. And then that's when I realized, just in case, this is just in case. And I see this tomorrow, 2 days, 4 days, a week, 2 weeks. Too many repetitions, way too many. So in Super Memo, and adding a dimension that he hasn't mentioned is priorities. If it's very basic, fundamental, but I still want to put it, because of the priority range it could be delayed. So even if the interval is a year, perhaps I need 2 years or 3. And if I successfully recall that because it's basic, that means that I will have a bonus. So the next interval will be even larger than the one that it would have been if I did the repetition on the same day, that it become outstanding. So that means that perhaps I will do even 1 repetition less or 2 fewer repetitions in my lifetime. In my collection, I have items like that I only did 2 reps, and the next repetition is in 14 years. That means that the 3rd repetition will send the interval already longer. It will exceed the 30 years. So it's very likely if I don't fail that I won't do a 4th repetition. I will be like 80 years old by then. So in Super Memo, you can have more luxury with this because the repetition count load, it's lower.
You might only be willing to make those items that are extremely important to you and that you know you can get right. But to me, it's so important to remember the fundamentals, and the cost seems so low that I'll always take.
So perhaps I don't do for the ones that I had used before with Anki, before I use Super Memo. But with Super Memo, I always do this like the definition card or the concept card, let's say, systematically. No exception. But and I spend seconds in each one, so it's not a big deal. It's worth it. It's like an insurance. I pay just a very small fee, and I blind myself. I'm blinded with any accident that may happen. And I will identify, there's a fire at home. Hey, boom. You have the firefighters, the alarm or the extinguisher, boom, solved. You cannot prevent the fire. The fire will be there. But you can end the fire right away, very quickly. I cannot prevent the lapse because I'm human. But what I could do is to identify these lapse timely and solve that lapse. That, hey, this will be reset and I will remember it. Again, my second chance. It's actually a good analogy.
Something nice like this.
And now what he does, he sped this up. He makes the selection, then Alt-Z to create the cloze solution. It's the most efficient way in Super Memo, not because it has to be like this, It's because it's designed like this. If you want to use a Q&A, it's super buggy. We'll only use, in his case, machine learning because it's the active concept. Will not apply, so we'll use the hook, but it won't apply the concept, set the concept, or the template. It's not worth it. So even if you're sure you do not want a close deletion, still do the close deletion. And then you can edit later and remove the 3 dots. And if you don't care, you just leave the 3 dots for life, if this doesn't create any friction for you. Secondly, is there are 2 ways that you can ask this question, at least in English. Like he does in the context of computer science, what is exploration? Or you can ask, what is exploration in the context of computer science? So I start, hey, I'm giving you the big word already, exploration. That's a concept. And then I'm narrowing down the scope. Hey, in the context of computer science, because there are more domains for that. Or first, I give you the domain, and then what, the concept I want to ask. And then because of English grammar, usually you put the comma. Depends on you. I'm actually biased in the sense, not in the sense that I prefer one option over the other. It is more meta. Is that I always prefer to be consistent. So whatever I decide, I'm consistent on this decision. So I know my thought process. That if I start in the content, comma, what is, hey, that was done on purpose. That means what I ask has some nuisance already. It's not just, hey, give me the definition. Or I have other cards and I'm specifying more. And in this case, I will start like this. Depends on you. At the beginning, no worries about this. Just ask in plain English or the language you may use. But after, in my case, 15 years, then I realized that I can, the time investment on flashcards is reduced by the consistency in the formulation. So even if I've forgotten why I created this flashcard or the answer, at least it's more, I can communicate better with my previous self because there's a lot of implicit and embedded information that is not there. And I know from my previous self. Perhaps I have different iterations of that. Let's say I created this, I don't know, 4 years ago, not just last year. So before I predate this convention, this happens, that in my collection now I have different stages of the same convention, or different conventions coexisting. This is also the case. So I have to communicate with my previous self of 1 year ago, several years ago, That means that if I will see no information, I only see the text. Sometimes, based on the formulation, I can already assess, hey, it's from this generation. When I was like that, that was from December 2020 and March 2021 in this scope. Because I divide these generations of my previous self, I split qualitatively those eras or generations of my previous self. And with this technique, it's so easy. It's like, hey, I have to talk with this person, John, Andrew, I don't know, whatever names. It's just an example. So you know, because they are your close friends, you know more or less how they think, the vocabulary they use, and so on. So you can adjust. Hey, yeah, you can adjust. If I want to explain this to that person, to Andrew, I will be like this. I will phrase it like this or like that. So you adjust your words to that person, your friend of yours, because you already know, right? So it's this thought process, but with copies of your previous selves, of yourself. Not just one previous self and that's it. They are like degrees. This is massive. This already helps a lot. And I have metadata, so I can actually verify with constancy of age. Oh yeah, 2020, December or no, October. Oh yeah, makes sense. So I still have metadata I can rely on. So it makes this a lot easier.
Oh,
Here you go. So this looks like some convention.
Yeah, one other thing I'll say is that whenever you see these,
Okay, good to know. He's going to explain that now.
magical arrows, this is just my syntax sort of indicating that this is a note that I wrote myself rather than.
Exactly. So they mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can use your own conventions. In this case, it's a arrow kind of thing. Without being an arrow in Unicode, it's just using ASCII characters. This is true if you put it between the text, for me. But since I'm oblique as extractor, it's kind of rare. So I will make the extract and have this at the end of the extract or at the top of the extract, not in between. Before I did AI, now that I use AI, I will at the bottom will be the AI generated thing. That's why some conventions coexist. So if I see a topic that is old, and perhaps I will see it in 2 years, in 2026, I will still see some topics from 2000 that have different conventions. If you want this, in Super Memo it's very limited, but you can still do find and replace. So if it's just you updated your convention, you can still update this in your entire collection by find and replace. Find dash dash greater than, replace this to whatever convention you have now, end of the story. What you cannot do is regular expressions that you could send this at the top instead of at the bottom or to the other way around. Not a big deal. Not a big deal.
Than being part of whatever I extracted this paragraph from. It serves literally no purpose other than to simply indicate that fact. But yeah.
What I use is a double colon. Semicolon, sorry. Semicolon, semicolon, put together. Why? Because it's very unlikely that I have false positives, that in the actual context, the genuine text I imported contained two consecutive semicolons. Even if I have some code, let's even bulletproof that I have programming code, it's very unlikely I have 2 consecutive semicolons.
I really like this framing of the exploit trade-off as a sort of conflict or tension, competing for your attention. The attention economy is always something that I'm talking about with NICE and strategy, for example, on the podcast. So yeah, I really like this framing from Peter Whittle. But I don't have really anything more to add. So what I'll do is I'll increase the priority. I want to see this again. I want it to be shown to me early in my queue.
I think he's using the priority like this just to show off, to explain, hey, that's my thought process is this, to explain it. But if this was be off camera, he will just do some other key binding or have out the hotkey instead. Related to priorities, by the way, is look at this. I know that he learned Chinese language. And he used Super Memo. It's nice to see that this is in the same collection. I don't know if he has more than one collection, or if he has Chinese dedicated collection, and still has some Chinese in the Incremental Writing collection, or everything is in the same place. But good to know that he's delivering that.
The next time.
Related to formulation, look at the other item. Difference between left and right graphs. What? Then you have the glossation. This is another example that he adapted the Q&A, made the extract and did the glossation. And he doesn't care about the glossation, so it's dummy and he can tolerate this. So he doesn't spend time editing, removing this, or still he hasn't done the next repetition. So he had no opportunity to delete it. By the way, what I do So time to time, once a month or when I feel like this, I do find and replace. Question mark, space, square bracket, dot, 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 and closing square bracket, find and replace. And I replace by just the question mark. So I get rid of this in bulk. I don't have to edit every single time. I don't spend time manually to do this. If it happens in the repetitions, I just tolerate the noise. And the second point is that he doesn't says what is the difference between. It's difference between left and right graphs. So you could say that it's not proper grammar in English, but it's more to the point, because at the end of the day, you ask the question to yourself. You don't have to be syntactically correct, grammatically correct, and be verbose if this for you is already atomic and works for you. I already know it's implicit what is at the beginning. Why? Because in incremental reading, you do the question and answers for yourself to recall this in the future and have this in your long-term memory. You are not going to share this with other people, unlike Anki. Most Anki users will use someone else's card. This will affect the formulation. Then you will have to follow the proper grammar rules and syntax and the spelling. Unless it's a genuine typo, that can happen. But your intention is, hey, this has to be read for anyone, not for just myself. That's why you can get shortcuts like that.
Let me see it. So I'll update the priority and just move on. Oh yeah, and the importance of the interval in the importance of time, how long you decide to spend, for example, in the casino. That's also important. But yeah, I don't really have anything to add at this time, so I'm just going to move on to the next.
I have nothing more to add, which, by the way, is something I say at the end of the videos. The video is longer, and oh my god, 8 minutes, and I have been recording for more than half an hour. It will be long. The point is that I cannot add anything new today. Using the current knowledge I have, iteratively, with incremental reading, I will expand my knowledge. And next time that I see this, could be that I can add something. Or relate, make the connection, the link, with something I have learned between the prior repetition and today's repetition. So what's the best thing you can do? Move on and just wait for time for the next repetition and incrementally get there. Build the big picture, the understanding.
Stuff in my queue. See, this is really, it's really important.
That's an example for me that this won't work. Why? Because I have different previous knowledge. And yeah, I know what is A/B testing. I know what is a clinical trial. Yes. And what an ethical is. But I don't know what's Thompson sampling. Perhaps I do, but I don't know the name for that. This could also be the case. That's why if I use someone else's collection, if it's not items, the topics, it's very likely that it will be kind of useless for me because of the massive difference of the previous knowledge. It's not just the cosmetics or the conventions, it's also your thought process behind that.
Important information, and I love that it's given an instance of why traditional clinical trials, they can be unethical and inferior to other sorts of experiments, for example, using Thompson sampling instead. But I just can't think of a good way to formulate this right now. Please leave a comment if you do find a good way to formulate this.
I don't right away. I will need some time. But now, what you could do is ask the AI. Actually, let me try this. Since it's a video and I'm lazy, I don't want to type this in, I will just do OCR. So that's a flow that before didn't exist. And by the way, if you want to use OCR Having a high color contrast will help. So, okay. So that's the question. What was an ethical practice? What an ethical practice was involved in the Tuskegee syphilis study? Deliberately untreated syphilis. Medical professionals deliberately left the men untreated as a part of the study. Which men? I already know they were African American. Here you go. This is kept, it's left out. Okay. Who conducted? Okay, the US Public Health Service. Okay. When it took place, that's not relevant. It lasted 40 years. So if I know that lasted 40 years, I only need to memorize one date. When it started or when it finished. In my case, it's easier for me to remember the start because it's a lot closer to a big event I already know, that is the Second World War. So this will be easier for me to remember, and if I do the quick math, 32 plus 40, 72. I don't even need to memorize that, in case I do care. If I have a lot more facts in this timeline, or in these concepts of trials, and I want to have this chronological order more easy to recall, I could do it. But for me, if I do it, it will be very low priority. But today, I will not even do this card. And what was this study? To experiment on untreated, So what I want is actually to make this connection that, hey, it's an example of a case of A/B testing that is unethical. One of the strategies I can use is to fully memorize this case. So at least I will have memorized one case that exemplifies this. Perhaps I want to just memorize this, remember this, without memorizing any particular study. This is kind of analogous with language. I could just learn something, one grammatical rule, in abstract. I don't know. Before this kind of words, nouns, uncountable nouns, the article, it's not with the exception of this and that. You can already tell I don't do this because I cannot even recall one English grammar rule out of the bat. So what I do, spoiler alert, what I do is the other way around. I will have some sentences that I are applying this rule already. And I have to recall that. And if there are exceptions, the sentences will use those exceptions. So implicitly, I know, hey, that is what it's supposed to do, but in this case, it's irregular. It's this instead. And yeah, I will memorize that word particularly. That phrase. But then, with repetitions, overall with time, I will do the abstraction anyways. That's why sometimes, yes, I can fully say the sentence that I used, the context, or the interesting part of the sentence, the phrase, not the entire thing. But most of the time, I don't. And even if I do, it's not a big deal, because then when I see another sentence, it's, hey, it's as important as this. Like he did, hey, this case is like the casino. Oh yeah, because I remember the casino perhaps was my first exposure to this topic. I identify that. So for me, it's enough. Then, by going back to the topic instead of the analogy, I have this other, there is another study about, the Oxford study thing it's called, about the behavior with students that they had to cancel because they were super violent and so on. If it was unethical and so on, it's, hey, this is like this other trial, like what was the name? Tuskegee syphilis study. Unethical, so I use this as an anchor. If I want that, I will create a card for it. That means that I need to memorize some details to remember some of the details of that study. If it happens that I discovered this study through incremental reading, it's not something that I already knew from my past before I used Super Memo. So in this case, I will remember, these are studies because they wanted to know the A/B testing. was treated and untreated. And it was, in the long term, was 40 years. I don't know why they used particularly African American men. Second, why this ethnicity? It's because it reacts different. What happens? That I'm not familiar with syphilis. I think syphilis is like some virus that can be infection, yeah. It gets in Spanish, but no worries. I can just click on English. Yeah. Okay, I was not sure. Yeah, sexually transmitted infection. Pam. Okay. But this affects one of the questions I cannot answer now is, was this decision random? Was because of they were low budget, they abused the social economic power of those 100 several hundred people, or they have chosen this because they have like more exposure. It's easier for them, or I don't know. Well, what could be the case? But already, what I see is, hey, look at the pictures. Which ethnicity is that? Which ethnicity is that? Right? Huh. But regarding of this, this falls already outside of the example. So let's assume that I don't know about that. I will have to investigate a little. If I do, this makes sense because syphilis is the main demographic is this race. Yes, there's a few hundred because the N is enough. And why Alabama and not any other place? I don't know. But the point that I want to focus is that why it was unethical. Well, because they could treat them. They could treat those few hundred men, and they did not. That is unethical. Then, once I have this, I will take this example. I know it's unethical. I want to remember why it was unethical. Oh yeah, they deliberately untreated syphilis when they could. Then I also want to recall by the name. So if this is mentioned anywhere, just by the name, the Tennessee syphilis study. Yeah, this unethical study that involved a few hundred African American men with syphilis. I know syphilis already, it's in the title. Where? This is giving me already context. But now I have AI. So what I ask now in the void, I can ask ChatGPT about it. And then if I do care, I will fact check that. So why they do selected only African American men and not other ethnicities. Usually I don't even care about typos. If it's a word that doesn't exist in English, I know that ChatGPT can tolerate those typos. If it was some other word, yeah, this could mislead, but other than that. Okay, the second reason is what I said, the economic and social exploitation. Racism, illegal social protections. Yeah, could be the case that, hey, you in the US, you cannot afford healthcare. Hey, you can get in this study and get treated or not, depending if you're in the control group. If you're in the control group, you're screwed. But you don't know, because if you know you're in the control group, it won't be blind. The study won't be blind, right? But since I'm pretty sure this is a known case, I'm pretty sure I can find other articles and dig further. Real sources, not AI training. Nice. Then let me ask, what is Thompson sampling? I ask this because I generally don't know. Use probability theory for solving multi-aimed bandit problems. Oh yeah, applications, clinical trials. Okay, so goes into sense that James' article is about exploration, exploitation. Coming the recommender systems, okay. Online advertising, okay. But for the link, the semantic link here, the connection, is because the application in clinical trials can be used to allocate patients to different treatments arms in clinical trials, balancing the need to learn about new treatments. Exploration, with the need to give patients the best known treatment. Exploitation, okay. Even just in case, I already got it, but just in case, I could ask, how does the Thompson sampling relates to the... What was the name of the case? I'm lazy. I don't want to... I'm not familiar with this. Tuskegee and syphilis. Here you go. The lazy approach. And I know I didn't capitalize that. I don't need to. There are some ways to conceptually relate, especially when discussing ethical considerations. Here you go. In the decision making. The Tuskegee syphilis study serves as a historical example of unethical research practices. The connection between them, between the Thompson sampling, relies primarily on the realm of ethical considerations and the importance of responsible decision making in research. Applying principles like those in Thompson sampling and in clinical contexts will aim to avoid the kind of exploitation and harm exemplified by this study. Yeah, because perhaps mathematically, the best case is to exploit that, because it will yield the best results, the most knowledge, insights from the study. Yes, but you're not treating numbers or animals, which is a controversial topic, by the way. No, they are humans. So you're messing with a few hundred lives. So you're going to not exploit that in the same manner that if they were rats or plants. Then I will mention my GPD, the flashcard maker Lee, and make Q&As to remember all what I have asked you related to syphilis study and ethics. Make comparisons against or with Thompson sampling. Oh my god, what I am discovering is that if I verbalize what I'm typing, I have to type a lot slower. Oh my god. Now I get the same as before. What was the study? Who did that? When it took place, sorry. Who did that? The US public health care. Why it was unethical? But this is new information now. Why were only African American men selected? So why the sample was for this? Oh yeah, racial prejudices. Because of economic exploitation. They are, that's the key word. Yes. Vulnerable targets. Why? Because, simplifying. Because the other, let's say, white men, the average American white men, will have higher salaries and they could afford healthcare. So they will not need to go in a study. Now, how did economic and social exploitation affect the selection? That is the other way around, and by the way, I didn't write this until now, limited healthcare access. This already is implicit that you are familiar with this. In my case, I am. I know how America healthcare works. It's a lot different than the country I live in Spain. That just because you're a citizen, you have already healthcare granted. It's a human right, the access to healthcare. So I will have the flashcards of why it was like that, what it led that, and it led to the reasoning, why it was unethical, and how this relates to exploitation. Let's see if I got those by AI. If not, I will create the cards myself. The Thompson sampling, okay, how is Thompson sampling applied in clinical trials? Fair treatment allocation, nice. So I know the definition already, and I want to remember the definition. What is a key ethical difference between Thompson sampling and the Tuskegee study? The ethical framework, okay, that's not a full answer for me. Operates an ethical framework, unlike the study that was not ethical. This is super speculative. Sorry, this is not in the text. I don't know if this study is in the training data, but I will, if I do care, I will have to verify that. It nowhere says that terms were broken of informed consent. It's very likely, but I don't know. What was the major ethical violation? That's a good example. That's a good flashcard. What was the major ethical violation in the Tuskegee study? Withholding effective treatment. They had penicillin. They had the treatment. They knew the treatment required for this disease, and they didn't do it just to see the control group with no treat, how they develop. And it's okay, perhaps you did it for a few weeks. Could it still be ethical? I don't know where the limits are, where you draw the lines, if it's just a few weeks. But it's 40 years. Oh my god, that is almost you neglect this for the rest of your life. So, these men sign up this, that, hey, yeah, I don't want to be treated, or likely to be treated, because I will not know if I am in the control group. So it's 50% chance if there are two groups, or third if there are three, I don't know. I haven't read the article. But basically, there's a chance you will not get your disease treated for the sake of science. Yeah, I want that, and I signed it. That's what it's very likely didn't happen, and this is the flashcard about that. But it's speculative. I need to verify this. How does Thompson sampling handle decision making under uncertainty? Updates knowledge. Hey, that makes the semantic connection with learning. James is reading this article about exploitation and exploration. And he mentioned already that this applies to learning. Here you go, this is a connection, updates knowledge. That means that today I have some knowledge, previous knowledge. If I read more about this topic and something else, next repetition, in 140 days, I think it was, I will have more knowledge. I will have updated my knowledge. So this could change my decision making, influence my decision making, and make a different choice, even though there's still uncertainty. I don't have all of the information required to make the optimal choice. I have less uncertainty. I have more information, more knowledge, but not all of it. It's a more informed decision, but it's still a partial decision. Nice. Then, how would principles of Thompson sampling be applied in medical research? Minimize harm. Yes. So perhaps you cannot delete, remove all of the harm, but at least you minimize it. It's already a win. And ensure ethical treatment and informed consent in experiments. So let's say that I have cancer and they told me, I know this from someone else. I will apply it to me for privacy. So let's say that I know I have cancer. And they told me, hey, there's an experimental medicine. We don't know the outcomes. It's very experimental. But hey, if you do nothing, it's very likely you will die in 2 years. At the most optimistic estimation. If you do this, I don't know what could happen. It could increase your lifespan. Perhaps not. Perhaps just the quality of it. So you will die eventually anyways in 2 years. But you will feel better. You could socialize with your family on those 2 years. Or perhaps it will even cure the cancer, right? It's okay. So I sign this up, then I get this treatment, and oh shit, I die in 3 months. Well, that was a risk you accepted. But even though you were, you know what I mean? So in this case, I could relate to this because I already have one memory of that. So I will add in my own notes here. Oh yes, like this person I don't want to mention that had that. Then, last one. What historical lesson can be learned from the Tuskegee study? The importance of ethics and research. This could be useful as a redundant card. So I'm asking the same question, but more implicitly. So I'm not saying, hey, what was unethical about this study? No. What can be learned from this study? What was the historical lesson? Hey, yeah, the importance of ethics. I haven't mentioned it was unethical. It's a good redundant card. Then what I didn't got from AI is the exploration and exploitation. Oh yeah, it's here. So what I want is at some point in the text, exactly, I want that, is yeah, in this context, gathering information equals to what? Exploration. And using the current knowledge equals to what? Oh yeah, exploitation. So I can also create that. Let's do one experiment. I will select this, cite this, and ask for an answer. Make Q&As which answer are exploration colon, and exploitation. Again, I don't mind the typos. Only in the case that I see that, oh, it got something else, then I will invest my time to correct the typos. Oh, I see it repeats all of the Q&As and just adds. Okay. What is the role of exploitation in decision making? So in this case, I have the generalization already. So perhaps if I should create my flashcards, I will have started with this example. It is a study. And then later on, perhaps I will have discovered that, hey, it's the same for this study and this one. So I will make the generalization that perhaps is in the all medical clinical trials. But then it's, hey, you know what? It's not just the medical trials. It's just decision making. Doesn't have to be decision making in clinical trials. So it's even more abstract, more generalized. So what is the role of exploitation in decision making? Use current knowledge. Nice. And what does exploration benefit in the long-term decision making? Gathering new information. It's not exactly how I will phrase it, but yeah. If you're new, you're not that good in making flashcards and formulate that. That's a start. That's better. It's very likely this is better that if a noob starts and do a super long paragraph. Even if you start with this and you copy and paste this to super memo, you can iterate on that and make it your own. Make it more personal and with your own words. So that is a quite long response of what I will do. And yeah, could you ask? Yes, it took me 3 years to respond. It's not the best, but it's one approach. And then I will have to do it myself in my genuine collection. And with some time, I could share with you, hey, those are the genuine flashcards I created in the state they are today. Because I can tell you, I will not just do verbatim copy-paste. I will do copy-paste and get some of them, for sure. But I will do slight modifications. And I will assign different priorities. So, hope this has been helpful. And let's continue with the video incrementally.
Because I think it would make a really good item. I just can't think of a good way to frame it. I actually posted this short paragraph up on Twitter, and
Oh, good to know. So he posted this on Twitter. Oh, good to know. I haven't been primed. I needed all of this with AI as an example. So let's say, how does the meta change in online video games? Where does the drive to challenge the domain meta come from? Examples of this in sports, Forsbury flop. Forsbury flop, is this with the high jump? I'll have to double check that.
I'd love to draw on the collective intelligence and expertise of the audience to help me formulate this item. So if you have any good ideas, you can follow me at experlearning. That's like experiment without the ment, and learning. Yeah, I'd love to hear your ideas.
Well, good to know I contributed to this case with something another use case. Instead of asking other humans, collaborative intelligence is asking artificial intelligence. So it's a good complement.
I was kind of thinking about, what instances of the explore exploit problem can I think about in real life? And one of them that I really like is, how does the meta, how does the meta change in online video games? So, for example, I've never played League of Legends, but I know this is surely one of the things that is discussed amongst League of Legends nerds. What's the best character to pick? What's the best hero to choose? How should you arrange each character on the map in order to give yourself the best sort of strategic advantage, increase your chance of winning? So when you're in a League of Legends team, should you invest resources into sort of just choosing the dominant meta that everyone's sort of converged on and that is sort of publicly known, or should you invest time into finding alternative strategies that other people won't expect that could then become the new dominant meta, right? And so I think a classic example of that is the Frosbury flop. You know what? I've got the internet. Why don't I just look? Edge.
That's a question I had. So he used Windows virtual machine for the sake of super memo. Is if you want to check for information, you use your genuine browser, then you communicate with the virtual machine, or you do it there, so you can import for the browser in the virtual machine and so on. Nice. Ah, yes.
Right, here we go.
It's exactly what I thought, yeah.
Okay.
He changed the meta of the technique and all of that for the high jump.
Wikipedia to the rescue, as usual. The Frosbury flop, popularized by Dick Fosbury, I've said it wrong, who brought this new sort of technique, jumping over backwards, to the world's attention, right? So he invested time, rather than just focusing on the dominant meta, the dominant technique in...
Sorry that I paused for something off topic, but it's in the screen. You will notice just below his face, he's using a hotkey. So I already know that if you use a virtual machine, a hotkey still works fine. Good to know that. And that's what I mentioned in another video. Well, this video that I'm reacting to, but in a different video that I released, that why he changes the priority so slowly by the dialogue and so on, when he could have a hotkey. It was for the sake of the explaining this to the audience.
In the high jump, he decided to use this. What?
And by the way, that is a good example, because it's something you already know, that is a different instance of the same concept. So now you identify this, that this changes the meta, and if we go back to the question, yeah, the tension between acting on one's best knowledge and gathering more information or more knowledge. Fosbury flop is one example in a sport. He also mentioned one in video games. So when you make these connections, this is wonderful. This is when you connect previous knowledge, something you already know, with something new, and then you realize, hey, now that I'm more knowledgeable with this, hey, I already know that. It's just a different instance, and perhaps in a different domain.
Invested time, crazy method for getting over the bar, but of course it turned out that this was much more efficient than the alternative traditional approach. So that's one example of like this problem, I guess.
And now, what he used is a different layout. He applied a layout by the key binding, by the way, because that was not seen. And you can see only half of the screen. This is useful if you want to use super memo in conjunction with something else, usually the browser, to check other sources or have a language model, ChatGPT, in the website or whatever. And he prefers to use the knowledge tree in half the screen, half of the super memo screen, a quarter overall. This already tells more or less his flow when he does that.
The tension that exists between acting on one's best knowledge.
And he just customized the width. I don't know if it's for the sake of the video or he actually does this often.
Using the dominant meta or just gathering more, trying to find a new one. And also, where does the drive to challenge the dominant meta come from? Like, why did Dick Fosbury search for this? Like, my hypothesis was always that the drive to find the new dominant meta would come from the underdog, someone who's not performing well at the current time. Like, if you're already...
Exactly. You're the underdog. You investigate more because you want to become number one. If you're already number one, what incentive, what motivation you are to discover a new meta if you're already winning, right? You'll have to wait until someone beats you to then think, how can I improve this? How can I improve the height of the jump? And even though there's only one winner, right? One first position and 3 in the podium. So there are more underdogs. There are more athletes that doesn't win. Why not any other of them change the meta or were motivated to change it? Perhaps they tried. They just didn't discover it. What does it take for this? It's just motivation. It's consistency. It's just creativity, intelligence. What makes the cat that, hey, this athlete can do it? Or perhaps will be the first one. Meaning that if he discovered that, but told no one, keep it a secret, perhaps other people will have discovered the same technique eventually. It just happened that he did it the soonest, the first one. But yeah, those questions are like, all of this is what I cannot ask AI about.
If you're the incumbent, it's more likely that the challenger is going to be the one exploring, trying to find information that can defeat the incumbent strategy, right? So let's see whether that's the case. Let's
see.
Let's look at the history of Dick Fosbury.
Also, something to take into account. He now is, no pun intended, exploring the article. He's not importing anything yet. So he checked the article, leads me to believe he doesn't have Dick Fosbury in his Superman collection. And he seems not to import this, or not yet. When do you decide this? If it was me, it's already a given there's value here. So even if I don't know if it's this what I'm looking for this answer is mentioned, this is already exceeded what I called the importability threshold. This already deserves to be in my collection. And now that I'm reacting to is, shoot, I cannot wait to have my genuine session with my computer and import this article. I am familiar with this outline, that he invented this technique that was revolutionary and so on. But hey, now that I see that it's connected to this exploration and exploitation and example, I want to take this as a knowledge goblin. He still hasn't imported that. Let's see what he does.
Right, here we go. Fosbury, he started experimenting at 16. He had difficulty competing using the dominant high jumping techniques of the period. So he failed to complete jumps of 5 feet, right? So he couldn't even get into these track meets, right? This dominant technique, he's the underdog.
Not just the underdog, that, hey, you're getting there, but you don't win any prize or any competition. No, you don't even qualify for high school. The minimum requirements to compete.
The straddle method is the dominant technique. Yes, this is excellent. All right. I don't know why.
And now I think he is going to import. He just copied the URL. Let's see if he used a hotkey or just copies that. I don't know. Pasted that.
I opened it in Edge. I'm going to have to open it in Incremental Internet Explorer just to import it. But let's see. Oh, what a mess. Ask me later. Go away.
Okay, back in the day, 3 years ago, yes. You could not import for Microsoft Edge. Now you can. Even though at the time of the recording, July 2024, you can still use Internet Explorer. And Wikipedia still works. Just one of the very few websites that still fully renders the page in Internet Explorer. So yeah, I also did that at the beginning. Hey, let me open this link in Internet Explorer for the sake of importing it in SuperMemo and have all of the sources and all of that.
All right, so I'm just going to import this as...
It's the very first time that in the priority range when you import this, 1 to 100. Wow. So 99% of the scope of the collection. Basically, he only skips the first 1% of the collection, the highest. We could simplify. This could get any random priority after importing. Could be in the 90s or in the 5% or in the middle. He only skips the first 100%. Wow. Massive.
A child of the current element.
Interesting. So he's not going to use, for in this case, any default concept like to do or imports. He's not going to do like a person or sports. That it will be more or less what is about, right? Oh, this person is an athlete. It's related to sports. Even assuming he has a concept for this specifically, he won't be setting this concept. Why? Because the concept you set is not the concept that defines what it is, like in a personal knowledge management app. No. He's going to set the concept of what is his intention. For him, this athlete relates to this meta, changing the meta, that relates to the exploration exploitation. And this exploration exploitation is related to machine learning, by the way. So what he's going to do is that he's going to import this as a child in the knowledge tree. So this will be a lot different if I was just, I don't know, learning about the history of sports. I'm a historian. So even if we find the semantical written process and learn from the semantical, for us, the intention is dramatically different.
I always do that.
Because at the end of the day, super memo is just for learning. I don't want to categorize, oh, those are people. Among people, those are athletes. And if I want to specify track and field or high jump, whatever, if I want to dig further. No. What I want is to learn this. Hey, this is semantically related to this. I don't care about this. That's it.
Import as a child of the current element. I know it's not optimal. Like sometimes it's good to import into a concept new node or whatever. I don't know. I just sort of stick with what I
have done this, but this is scarcely done now. I don't do this. It's an outlier case for me. But if he has one single collection and he's consistent with this, makes sense. Because next time that I would do a subset review, I will get this as well. I don't care about the Olympics and what he has done, how many prizes, competitions he won. I don't care about that or his life. I care about his research with the high jump and how this relates to exploration and exploitation. So for me, this has value inside this concept, machine learning. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
started doing as beginner, so. All right.
What was that?
Beginner, so.
Background, okay.
All right. That's super interesting. I'm glad I...
Yeah, again, the color contrast with links is too low with this background color.
I'm glad I checked that out.
Now what he's experienced is this peaking pleasure. That, it's a lot better than a sexual orgasm. Goes beyond that and lasts longer. It's a different league. A completely different league. The pleasure of learning. The aha, oh whoa, good to know. Those kind of feelings.
Okay. And I'll get a picture of him.
Okay, this is a good example. So for him, I'm not versed either. So I cannot even name any single athlete about high jump. Even though I have seen some competition, some Olympic Games, I don't know how many editions. Let's say 12 years ago, something like that. By the way, the Olympic Games from 2024 are just next week, of the time of the recording. So let's say 12 years. Yeah, there was one Spaniard that I think he ranked third, enough to make the podium. I don't know that athlete. I just happened to see that because I was watching the Olympics. So whatever they were airing in the Olympics, I would have watched at that time, at that moment, right? But that's all I know about the sport. I cannot tell the name. I do not know the name of any athlete. So if I say the high jump guy, this works for me because he's the high jump guy. And that's my memory anchor.
Okay.
Here you go. Because I will remember that. Then, in my case, I will need a flashcard to remember his name. Why? Because first, I'm not even sure about his last name, how it's pronounced. Fosbury or the use pronounced, I don't know. It's the first time I see this name. I don't know anyone with this last name. And I'm going to skip his first name because, oh my god, it's YouTube.
And I'll get a picture of him. Oops, did I not?
Okay, so he decided to do more than one image components. Depends on you. Doesn't mean that everyone in the picture is him necessarily. I just prefer to if I ever use one, it will be just one. Unless then the context is when in a previous stage in his life, then if I do care, I will just use a different image when he was younger. Or just remove the image. But especially now in 2024, I don't spend that much time with images.
Okay. Okay, I'll say this and that.
Because this is not him. Perhaps there are no images explicitly because this was in the 60s. But I see that that's the technique against this other technique, the horse something.
Revolutionized the high jump event with a back first technique now known as the... Yeah, that'll work. That'll work as an item. Okay.
He first edited the text and then he did the extract. And look what it is. The tension that exists between the na-na-na and then you have this article as a child. Yeah, it's not common to do that. Even though you can know that if you select the parent, the tension that exists, you will know that this child has a different source. So I'm not going to do it now, but with SuperMemo you can navigate. And in the browser you can choose locate the extracts or tell away the sources. So if you really wanted to get rid of everything else, you could. And only the children, genuine extracts of the source, will be in the contents. And I'm not going to do this now because, yeah, I don't have this flow. It will take too long to build a collection to illustrate this case.
Right. Lower center of mass. That was the key of his technique. Okay. How interesting. Look, he found it difficult to coordinate all the motions involved in the straddle method and began to
That's the straddle method in the image. Okay.
Experiment to explore.
By the way, I could also do the items for that. So I will have an item with only this image, and I will ask, hey, how is called this technique in the image? Oh yeah, it's the straddle method. And another one with this image that it was Yorolenko, something like that, this athlete, female athlete. And I will ask, hey, what's the name of this technique? Oh yeah, the technique of this guy, the high jump guy, right? Well, I only know one name for this. So I know is Dick Fosbury, because I know that the technique was named after him.
To explore other ways of doing the high jump.
Yeah, that's the semantic connection. Explore.
Excellent. I'll highlight that.
Oh, good to know.
I'll highlight that.
Oh, so clever. So what happens? There's no easy way to know if you just modified one word, right? You could do your convention if you want. Once you have extracted this, everything will be the same text, like the same color. So it's If you don't have any symbolic characters or convention, you will not know that you edited that. But regardless of that, could be that it's the case, that it's in the text. You haven't changed that. Hey, I'm making this extract for this point of interest. That's the reason, the key point of the extract. I want to convey, to signal this to my future self when I see this in the next repetition. I can do the highlight, that is cosmetic. And yes, in Super Memo, you can right click and do the highlight because there's no easy key binding. But there's a key binding for ignore. Ctrl-Shift-I. Ignore is to signal that, hey, this is not important. Usually with Wikipedia, when you have the boxes that, hey, this needs verification, this is not quality up to standard, something like that, this is automatically set as ignored. And he does this. He now will set explore as ignored, but he has a convention that, okay, I never highlight, so if it's like this, I know it is equivalent of a highlight. Even if the CSS class that will apply with the key binding is actually to ignore. That is a lot tinier and so on. It works. I do this, but not visually. I'm a big proponent of, at least in Super Memo, because of its limitations, text, plain text safe. So I will have I have a convention in plain text that I know, hey, that was the reason. That's the highlight. Because if the text carries over or is messed up, I still know that, just in plain text. And on top of that, I can search for that in the collection. If I want to do, for instance, a subset of something that I know, extracts, that have a very remark point of interest, I will do it. For me, is the two asterisks. So with this, I can filter. Let's do a subset of something that are just something that I really care, regardless of the priorities, the intervals, and so on. Let me go through this. If it's just cosmetic, it will be CSS, and in Super Memo, I cannot search CSS. This is also one of the other reasons that in Super Memo, for me, everything has to be plain text. Perhaps I could add color if I wanted to, but it will be redundant. I still want redundancy with plain text, because I cannot search by HTML, I cannot search with wildcards or regular expressions and all of that.
So he invested more time. He invested his resources. I'll just put it in more abstract terms just to make the link explicit between the explore and exploit problem, which is stated in sort of abstract terms.
Exactly. So first, iterations. So if you first make this connection, could be more plain text, more abstract, and then you can later on formulate it more specific with the terminology of exploitation and exploration. Keep in mind he's writing this from scratch. It's another flow. Keep in mind that incremental reading implies some degree of writing as well. So you could just copy and paste a paragraph if you want, and then adapt it and cut the stuff, or write from scratch. You will end up with the same result. Depends on you. I prefer the other way around. I have text, and I cut it down, pam pam pam, until I finish this with my own words. I usually don't start everything from scratch. That's why I say that I don't take notes. I just modify sources incrementally.
I want to make it explicitly link it to this instance, basically. So I'll formulate it in these sort of awkward abstract terms. Invested his resources.
Explore alternatives. His new method, fast reflop, begin the
Super
new
cool. So I'll just quickly scan this, see if there's anything else interesting.
Also, for Super Memo perspective, he's not doing a repetition here. Why? Because he just imported this article today, some minutes ago. So, strictly speaking, he's not repeating this topic because he just imported this 10 minutes ago and he manually clicked every time if he navigated the knowledge tree. So once you import this article, it's already loaded in your screen in the element window, and he started reading this right away. That means that all of what he's doing this is not being registered as repetition. He only has one rep that is the automatic repetition. So this could be true. The next time you see that is, oh, this is half read already. How many repetitions I had done? Let me check the history. Huh? I only have the import date. The repetition on importing this. How so? If that's the case, if you want to be very strict, you will lock the repetition, Ctrl-Shift-R, to force the repetition. SuperMemo will slightly cheat, because you cannot have this on the same day. So in order to log in this today, we'll modify the date of the importing to the previous day. To be consistent with the limitation that in SuperMemo, you cannot schedule anything on the same day, unlike Anki. This is for topics, but it is also true for any kind of element.
Interesting. So
another SuperMemo related thing. What he's doing. Is he doing a subset review? No. I don't see his stats window, so I cannot even verify that. But I think what he's doing is just manually navigating the knowledge tree. So strictly speaking, it's not a subset review. He only did click on learn, and he got what he wanted. Yeah, perhaps he's doing a subset review of the branch. I don't know. This is never present. And now he's doing this article. He added content, and he's navigating this manually. This is no longer a subset review. What is this? Is this incremental reading? Is this incremental reading? Let me know your opinion. I'm not going to answer this, at least for now, because I want a genuine answer.
I wonder if there's a way to link this to the clinical trial thing. Like in a clinical trial, perhaps Fosbury, his coach would have, just forced him to continue using the inferior method in the.
It would have been unethical to force him to use that method because it was most common.
To maintain the sort of scientific approach to finding which method is the best. We've got to run this trial, and you're not allowed to use any other method. We need you to test this just in isolation. But instead, his coach allows him to allocate some of his resources to using the flop, for example, in his freshman meet, right? And this sort of approach, here we can't really talk about whether it's ethical or unethical. It's simply, sports ethics don't really come into it in this instance. But obviously, in a clinical trial, if you have people just receiving an inferior drug, for example, then this just becomes critical. It's a life and death thing. So this is super interesting.
And now he's writing this down. Wait, that was too quick for me.
It's a life and death thing. So this is super interesting.
Link to clinical trials. Mental link. If he's not linked, even in SuperMemo, you can actually link this physically, logically. So that, hey, this element has a link to this other element in SuperMemo, the collection. No, it's just mental. You make this connection, this link. The coach wasn't making Fosbury participate in the traditional clinical trial. He was allocating resources between the dominant method and his newly developed method, up until the point that the superiority of his technique was sufficiently convincing.
There doesn't seem to be anything else really that interesting about Mr. Fosbury to me, personally.
That's the key. There's nothing else interesting for him, for James, about the athlete, the Dick Fosbury. That's why for him makes sense that it's there. It's imported in this concept group instead. Because the only thing he wants about him directly relates to this concept, exploration exploitation, so it makes sense. Absolute sense.
Get rid of the rest of it, just delete. And this branch, I'm in two minds. On the one hand, this is super interesting and I'm really glad that I checked it out. So I'm actually wondering whether I could write maybe part of an article. Usually what I do...
Oh, nice.
On the one hand, this is super interesting and I'm really glad that I checked it out. So I'm actually wondering whether I could write maybe part of an article.
He has input and output. So I would say reading and writing, more or less. Because then he was using Super Memo for incremental writing before he moved to Obsidian with plugins and later to RemNode. That makes sense because even though you can do it in Super Memo, it's just plain text. It's very basic. Yeah, you can also do bolding and here and there, but it's way too primitive. So you have all of the scheduling, all of the incremental writing ready, but you don't have the standards and the links to make all of this writing. See, if this was very, very well done, and according to today's standards, that will be the dream. That will be the dream app that, oh, I can link what I'm learning, the input, with the output. It will be so convenient to do and so incrementally friendly and interleaving friendly. I could interleave input and output and then generate articles meaningfully and incrementally and based on what I'm adding as well in my collection and so on. And in Super Memo, this is way too tedious. The linking is too primitive and manual. And to check what you have linked is super manual. You don't see it and oh my god, it's terrible. So good that he had this flow.
Usually what I do if I want to turn something into an article is I'll go to my output folder. So this input.
You could achieve the same thing just having standalone collections. So the output would be their own collection, but then you cannot do the linking.
Is essentially all of my reading, videos, audio, and all of that stuff. My output folder is articles, videos, programming projects, anything that involves releasing creative output into the real world. That's
exactly. In other words, input is from information, incrementally you convert it to knowledge. Output is knowledge you have now already. You'll convert it to information for someone else. You're sharing this to the world. Could be articles, videos, code, projects of any kind. Could be also art.
That's essentially how I define it in an abstract way. So the Fosbury thing and sort of the changing metas.
Podcast, for instance, programming, essays.
In video games and sports, it's sufficiently interesting, I think, to warrant creating an output folder. I actually wrote an article on my website, experimental-learning.com, on the input-output thing. It's called Input and Output in Learning. I don't consider it finished yet. It's kind of still an idea I'm putting on the input-output thing.
I wasn't expecting this. Okay, let me rewind. So he created a folder. Nice. And this folder will be a branch for this article inside the output. Nice.
Experimental-learning.com on the input-output.
Now, he gets the element. He manually moves it. You can also do this with Ctrl-Shift-V, by the way, and then navigate and press Enter. Or just do it fully manually by drag and drop and yeah.
Thing. It's called Input and Output in Learning.
And the other is that you can create it as a concept. Now, when you create a concept like this, it becomes the default browser, the default concept, the active concept, sorry. And now he will use it as a hook. It's another solution.
I don't consider it finished yet. It's kind of still an idea I'm developing, but you can check it out. I'll leave a link in the description as well.
So that means that he has concepts that are just for output, not for input, by the way.
Nope, this is completely opaque to me, really. So I'm going to decrease the priority, and also I'll increase the interval to like...
You can do this in one single step. Ctrl-Shift-P. Ctrl-Shift-P. You can change almost everything here. All of the properties. The interval, let's say 10 days. The priority, even the age factor and stuff like this.
60 days. So that'll give me the logic behind doing that. Sorry, is that if I have 60 days before I next see this element.
Not necessarily. 60 days that it will be scheduled again. It will be outstanding. Depending on the priority, you will see it or not. Unless you see all of the elements, especially topics, every single day, which is very unlikely and always the case if you use Super Memo how it's meant to be used.
I'll have had more time to learn the prerequisite.
I cannot see his numbers in his status bar. He doesn't show the status bar. But just based on the size that it's close to 70,000, I'm pretty sure he doesn't finish the outstanding queue.
Knowledge. Now, if I
At least for topics.
was being really diligent about this, I would actually import the prerequisite knowledge to understand this, or advance the prerequisite knowledge that already exists in my collection into that interval, before the 60-day mark, so that I could learn all of the prerequisite knowledge before this element next comes up. But I can't really be bothered right now. I want to do some more topics, so I'm just going to move on.
It's not a trade-off, because if you consistently do this, diligently, as he said, I only import this that I need for the previous knowledge and all of that. You will import, and then this third article you imported will also require, very likely, other previous knowledge, and it's like so many iterations, and then boom, you have 200,000 elements in your collection. So at some degree, you have to say, okay, not today. Not today. Depends on the priority. It's not enough. I will import it when I really care. Not now. Even if it's easy, it's 2 clicks away to import it. It's not justified. Why may this not necessarily be the best algorithm for solving the problem?
All right. And at this point, this element has pretty much exhausted all its use, even though it's still got this little note attached. I'm pretty sure I have an item for this already. It's pretty clear in my mind that these Thompson sampling and the rest of the stuff in this paragraph are related, so I'm just going to get rid of it.
Apply done. Yep. So he exhausted the usability of that topic. There's nothing else you can learn from that topic, therefore you apply done, because you are done with this topic. From the content that was already there and what you added. Okay, so now I have a feeling he's not doing a subset, he's just doing the outstanding queue. Because now he's going kind of off topic. And now we are in a different chapter. Ayn Rand, no idea what is this. Beta, cells, and sleep. Quality and adaptation, okay. So you know if the title says explore and exploit, yes, he invested quite a lot of time. It's not just this. He covers more topics, yeah, cool.
Okay, aha. Some Ayn Rand, I think. Objectivism. Interesting.
Also notice that he doesn't have the element data window. or the ancestors. And the status bar.
Yes. So
So it's a pity because there's some information that it will be nice to see to draw some conclusions.
okay. I'm hoping there's going to be someone who watches this that can give me some insight into
Let's see.
concept formation. Like, what really drew me to Ayn Rand's work was not the Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged.
The what?
Or work.
Wait, I need captions now. For this, I need captions. Ah, that was the thing I didn't know. The title of the chapter, Ayn Rand.
Was not the Fountainhead or Atlas work with to Ayn Rand's work was not the Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged or any of her literature or any of that. My first introduction to Rand was literally just reading the introduction to objectivist epistemology, right? And in it, she basically her epistemology or her metaphysics, it starts with a really interesting discussion of concept formation, and I don't know whether that exists anywhere else. I mean, I've looked on the internet. I presume it does, since it's surely got to be an important part of philosophy and cognitive science and neuroscience. It just occurred to me that it was super interesting, and I know Ayn Rand isn't taken seriously by, let's say, academic philosophers or just people who are into philosophy in general, but I just couldn't help but get super interested in this whole idea of concept formation, since I think originally my interest in concept formation literally came from concepts in Super Memo. And
That's what I thought. Comes from Super Memo, and by the way, he just raised my interest as well. And perhaps there's a pattern that if she is not respected or taken into consideration, same for the jump guy. Until then, he dominated. Let me actually look for this before I get more primed. Ayn Rand. And yes, I will import this to my channel. Yeah, the name doesn't ring a bell, but the image is. It looks familiar, I don't know why. That's also what I like about the community, that you could also see something that I will never in my life would have imported this or came across this. Very, very unlikely. And now because I trust him, I know he's very knowledgeable and knows a lot about Super Memo. Just because he said this, that his interest started with Super Memo concepts, then concepts in philosophy and so on, that's more than enough. This already says high priority, like 5% minimum. If I will import that. Yeah, let's see what he says.
reading Piotr Wozniak's articles, right? Reading Wozniak's articles.
Piotr Wozniak, the Polish pronunciation, by the way.
And I don't know, can anyone point me to better sources of information? Can anyone give me criticisms or back up any of the stuff?
Not really. So the only stuff, what I will share with you will be what you already mentioned, Piotr Wozniak articles. Other than that, I don't know. Not on top of my head. I'm behind you. I'm behind James. So
That Ayn Rand says about concept formation. I'd be really interested in reading that. And also it'd be good to have like maybe a source, sort of like a neuroscientific source, like a more low-level understanding of what concepts are. Like we talk about concepts, how are they arranged in the mind? How do they actually manifest themselves in terms of cell assemblies in the mind, in terms of neurons and
in cell sense, I think you said
synapses and cell assemblies in the mind.
Cells. Okay. Yeah, sometimes I struggle. I don't know, because for me, it's very uncommon. So Perhaps I'm familiar with the word, but only written in the written medium, never pronounced out loud. And then because has an English accent, sometimes I really need a second run to get it.
In terms of neurons and synapses and all of that stuff. So if you have any knowledge related to that, do let me know. But anyway.
Let me know as well.
I'll push through and you can leave any criticism in the comments. I'd be glad to read it.
Nope, no one mentioned anything, at least in the comments. Such a pity, man. I was ready as a knowledge goblin to steal the golden nuggets there.
It's all very abstract. I'm going to decrease the priority of this one, although I do think it's...
As you can know, he's a very versed super memo user. Did you notice that now he's doing repetitions? He's not just import an article and read the entire article or skim the article and apply done. He's clicking on next, on learn every time. He is changing the priority almost every single time because reassessing the priority is part of the repetition. That's why, for among other things, if it's an item, you grade your recall, you're not done. You have to press again. You don't see the next element right away, like Anki, because you have an opportunity to modify things. And one of the things, more commonly, is the priority. If you rate as good, and this goes to the next element, then when I change the priority ahead of time before showing the answer, or stuff like this. And also just doing the repetition already changes the priority a little. So I want to modify the repetition after I want to modify the priority after the priority has shifted because of the repetition. That's why I need this extra sub-step.
It's pretty useful, especially if I want to read more of Ayn Rand's work. So I'll increase the interval again. In beta cells of the pancreas.
Yeah, it's really hard to see beta cells of the pancreas. Action potentials provoke release of what? Insulin. And this is taken from the Wikipedia page, action potential.
Pancreas. Don't provoke release of insulin. This is pretty uninteresting, honestly. Decrease the priority to 70.
This is counting as a repetition. So the only action he did is A. I don't care much about this, but I do care enough to keep it in my collection. But A, you invested some time already. This is atomic, we could say. What I would do in this case, in case it's 70%, I will make the close solution of insulin, for instance here, the release of what? This will be reformulated later. So I make the close solution on insulin, and I change the priority of that. You could do this with Ctrl-Shift X, or you just do Ctrl-X, Alt-X, sorry. You can do just the close solution, Alt-Left to navigate and change the priority. So that is what I would do. Since it's already one close solution away, it's atomic already. It will be just reformulation if I want, but it's one idea already. Since I already invested time, and hey, for me that's not that interesting, it's 70%, I invested time with this. So if I see it again, I will have to read it again. And since it will be so long in the future, because of the new priority, it will be long to the future, I'll have to invest this time again. This is the exception, because it's already one action away. I will take the action, even if it's not worth it, because of the priority, because it's the last action required. So what I will do, I will make the close deletion, Alt-Left, navigate to the item I just created, and set the 70% priority. Well, apply done here, by the way. Apply done, Alt-Left, and set 70%. And I will see it eventually. Perhaps 70%, for me this means never. This is outside, it's well above my priority protection. But it's already there. That means in a few years, if this pops up in many repetitions, it will be in the form of item already, not in the form of topic. And I will have to invest time again to read it. I will do it when there's more text. But if it's one fact, I will not do this thing as he did.
It's interesting in the sense that I didn't realize that 70.
And related to this, now I notice.
It's interesting in the sense 70.
Okay, now I got it. I paused the video. So here I can see already one convention of his. When he has the interest or keyword, it's just in capital letters, all caps. When which words you should stop using when doing public speaking according to videos, recording podcasts. And this other one, during the podcast with Nias and Strat on connections, what word did you keep relying on to fill the gaps in thought? That's a very good use case. So he has the Golden Nuggets podcast with Xander. So this is self-reflecting, that then you realize, because someone told you this feedback, then you got this information, perhaps unsolicited, and then perhaps you want to act upon this feedback. And then it's okay, let me rewatch or re-listen to this podcast episode. What I have done unconsciously. Oh, I used this filler word. You know, or whatever. I don't know the case. I will need to check this episode. The fact is that okay, now I'm become aware of this. So I know the fact that in order to be a good speaker in a podcast, you should stop or minimize the words, filler words, this and that, pam, 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 pam. I know that. And I can recall those words. If you ask me, I will tell you the list of the words. That doesn't mean I will apply that. It's a different skill. I don't have to recall these words when I'm being asked. It's when I actually speak, I have to omit those words, right? This is a different thought process and a different skill. Since this is recorded, I can actually see it. And then you make this personal. In this episode about connections, so I already know, that one. What words did I keep relying on to fill the gaps? Because I want to avoid that. Then I identified, hey, those are the words. I cannot see it. This is the preview, so it's just a question. It's the title. And for items, the title is the start of the question. It's a really good case. Really excellent case.
It's interesting in the sense that I didn't realize that action potentials were responsible for doing this. I figured action potentials only, I'd obviously heard of them in the brain, right? Electrical activity propagating.
But I also know that they say that the digestive system is like the second brain kind of thing. And there's like some communication, still kind of unknown, but there's some communication there. If you don't care as much as him, 70%. I will set it as higher than that.
Down.
That's the beauty, that everyone is different, so you do what you want. You will achieve the pleasure of learning with Super Memo, because by setting priorities, you will see first what you care about the most. And doesn't have to be the same for everyone, unlike a curriculum, that everyone has to go through the same thing.
Not dendrites, an axon. It's pretty interesting that also occurs in the pancreas, but...
And by the way, that is an exception. That is a GIF that renders well. But when there's... because it's very empty. But if there's like a video, a lot of movement, a lot of pixels change every single time, it renders like crap.
It's really not mission critical knowledge, so I'll just bump down the priority to 70 and it'll get buried in my queue for a while. Maybe I'll see it sometime later.
Let me know if today, after more than 3 years, you have seen this item again.
Nearly all cell membranes. Voltage difference. Similar to the last one. Not that useful to me right now.
Again, so this is more verbose, but still falls in the same category. This is just one action. Perhaps it's not one memory, one fact. There's more information here. But for me, it's one action away. That is the definition of membrane potential. It is the difference between the exterior and interior of the cell. This could be just one card. So yes, you have animals, fungi, maintain the voltage, but for me, voltage difference between the exterior and interior of the cell. Oh yeah, membrane potential. So still here, it will require some reformulation, but still I will take one action. Select membrane potential, close deletion. That's it. Oh well, and reset the priority to 70 or 50. I don't know what you will do.
50.
50. Okay. I know why he did that. Here. See also that is usually, what is that? Yeah. Hey, this author still. It's better sales, but this is the Ayn Rand. The see also, usually at the bottom of the article, or he did this himself incrementally, I don't know. This is also due for Wikipedia pages. That, hey, this is related of existence, identity, implicit knowledge, and all of that. So once you're done with the article or the book, whatever that is, you can check that to keep crawling semantically the path. That, hey, my starting point was the concept forming, the formation of concepts, which is the first point, by the way, concept formation. But hey, wait a second, it's related to implicit knowledge. I also want to look into that and how it relates, because for me this is very, very relevant. So it's not just what they do, when and how, it's also how I continue. How do I keep linking this? So perhaps even if multiple people read the same article and have different experiences, oh yeah, for me it's this topic, it's this concept, for me it's this other topic. For me, I don't care, it's not even a topic, and so on. I mean a concept. The motivation to import that, to start reading it and learning from it is different. And not even that, even if it's the same, let's pretend it's the same, how we continue then will differ. And if we are 8 billion people in Earth, I'm pretty sure there will be everyone with a different path. There will be perhaps some people that have very close, very similar paths, but it's very unlikely that all of your experience with those articles in Super Memo will be the same. You crawl exactly the same manner, the same order, the same interest with priorities and so on.
I don't know, there's something about this. The idea that a neural network is static and symbolic. I don't know enough about neural networks to disagree in really a coherent way, but it doesn't seem to align with what I've seen of neural networks so far. They seem to be able
Yeah, I agree with his statement. Yeah.
to recognize like the weights of the neural network. They seem to change in a dynamic way that I would describe as dynamic. So I'm just going to get rid of this one. It's causing some interference, let's just say, and I don't know.
Interference, or should I say, contradicting information. So eventually this will create a cognitive dissonance, especially if you trust both sources.
If it is truly the case that this is true and it's mission critical knowledge, it'll come up somewhere else. So I don't know. I can feel confident just removing this from my collection.
Oh, okay.
Sleep, or the brain. Okay. I'm not really interested in the development of a brain, but I am interested in sleep. If there's anything good on sleep.
One of the things you can do is by search the word sleep if it's there. in the article. It's the brain. Okay, let me do it. Yeah, 2024, still using Internet Explorer. Okay, so we'll import this article. Oh, I don't have it in my collection. Okay. Okay, so now I have the semantical scheme. So what I can do is not the search. This is the collection. Click search in the toolbar. Find an article of or F3. Now I want sleep. Here it is. The poems rise, it contains nuclei that controls often voluntary, but simple acts such as sleep, respiration. Okay. Let's see if I have another instance. I can repeat the same thing. And here you go. Do you see that you also have the highlight, the color highlight of the search? So what I can also do is manually navigate, scroll, and let's see, oh, in this case it's a bad example because it doesn't appear again. You know what? Let me press F3. Here you go. It's the same as before, sorry. Next, down here. So, you can do this, especially if it's a long article and you only care about something specifically. You can use the key word. But have this in mind that this is like a syntactic search. I'm looking for explicitly the word sleep. Could be that the content is about sleep, but doesn't ever mention the word. But the theme, the topic is about sleep. They could say, I don't know, REM, that is the phase of the sleep, or whatever that may be. If that's the case, what you want to do is to skim this. So, at least here this is mentioned. Let me see, what is this? A side effect of this, or at least I will do an extra of this. That, hey, I haven't read this fully, but I know there's something in here. And I continue, F3. Hey, that's a good example. That means that I have a description here about the sleep related to the brain, but they have the main article. That's what's so good about Wikipedia. It won't tell you, hey, look at this article. Or, as we have seen in the sleep article, blah, 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 blah. You always have standalone content. I can read this without checking the main article. This is only if I want to know more. And in this case, it's even 3. Circadian rhythm and arousal. So then I know that in this case, I even have a section of the article about sleep. That's because it's Wikipedia. It's this case. Usually, especially if it's essays and articles, it won't be the case. So I am pretty... Oh, look at this, how many times it's there. Yeah, exactly, in the REM, what I said before. Homeostasis. Okay, let's read that. So I select up to here, and I make another extract. Now I know this speaks about sleep, but perhaps I'm still not done. Look at the scroll bar. There's plenty material to go. So let's press F3 again. Again. I only had one more. Now it's just about the references. Nice. Then I just apply done. And what they have is just this. As a side effect, something, and I still keep this, but keep in mind, this is because it's the search bar. If now here I say potato, okay, I have no potato in this collection. Let me see something that has, okay, neuron. If I now search for neuron, I will cancel this, so I don't spend all day here. Now you see that, hey, in this case I also have neurons in this text, but now the sleep is no longer highlighted, because this highlight comes from the search. This is temporary, as long as it's active in the search. And then I will do repetition here, but before that, since I already know that is for sleep, yeah, let me increase the priority, a big deal. So 0.0%. And the other one, this is self-contained, and there's even more link, so more or less the same. Perhaps less, because I want this to come first. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, yeah. Just to let you know that on the recording I stopped for a few hours and I slept the nap in between. So let's continue.
Function. Information from the sense organs is collected into the brain. Oh, yes. See, this sounds exactly like a neural network, right? Biologically inspired neural network. And you can see why. Especially when they've written it like this. Function of the brain. Visualize brain. Yeah, this is cool. I'll give this a 5 in terms of priority. I really want to see that again. Perception.
So he said that he was interested in was the sleep part of the brain. Article. Yet he's extracting parts they are not exactly related to sleep. But hey, now that I see those here, they are quite interested, even though it was not my goal. I haven't, as a knowledge goblin, I haven't started this for this golden nugget. But now that I came across this, yeah, I will pick it up.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Anything about the senses. Motor control as well. Give this 16.
What he does is he's adding the modifier Alt X, Shift Alt X, so he can modify the priority. I make a text selection. I want to extract this, but with a meaningful difference in the priority. So Shift Alt X, and I get here directly. I change the priority, something different, and I don't have to navigate to this extract that I just did. So those are two actions into one. And again, is this incremental reading for you? How long he's taking for a single repetition? He's not following the one action, one memory, one action, by the way.
Motor control. Yes.
Look at this. It's unreadable. The color contrast is way too low. That's what I did before. What I did the F3 with the search in article. I came across here because it says sleep, the word. So he's doing it fully manual, which is also good. But if you do it like this, it should be more incremental, not in one single rep.
Yes, right. Why do we sleep? Why do we sleep?
What was that? I may assume this is like one of his extensions using the Supermemo system that he did back in the day. I don't think that was part of a public release. He may have done this himself, and it looks like a preview. You no longer need that. In Supermemo 19, you can just click and it will load within Supermemo. It's not the best experience, but should be enough. Let's say it's delta wave, which what is this? And it doesn't look that good, but should be enough to have the preview. I asked this thing, do I want to import this or not?
Right? It's common for animals to sleep. It serves some common goal that is consistent across many different species. Where am I?
Is there an animal that doesn't
See, this is one of the interesting things about Supermemo and probably my idiosyncratic approach to using it. Stuff just ends up in the most random places, so you can sort of follow the
That's a consequence of his way to import. He doesn't use the concept hooks. He imports as a new child. So this is prone to happen. Even though they are in different parts of the knowledge tree, as long as they have the concept set, you can get those in the same place. So you could get all of the elements that have the concept set yeah, I cannot see it in his screen. Exploit, or whatever he applied. Independently, if they are inside a folder or another concept, but the concept is not this, it's not machine learning, it's something different.
Ways import pretty much as a child. I can follow the tree backwards towards the root, and I can sort of
This would, for his use case, by the way, since he does this quite often, I would use the ancestors window instead of the knowledge tree, by the way.
see where the initial things I was learning started and where I actually ended up. So I started learning about deep learning from machine learning, and I ended up at the brain and then into sleep. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I almost want to turn this or somehow link it to just a general question of why we sleep. So I'm super interested in that. And what is written?
What you could also do is you could link a concept element instead of setting it, linking it. And you could have a sleep, so you link the sleep concept. Because only this fragment, only this extract is related to sleep, not the entire topic.
Written a lot about it, and I've read a lot of what he's written about sleep, but it really seems like we don't know for sure a whole lot about what the purpose and function of sleep is, and so
yes, but at least we know that memory consolidation takes place during sleep.
I'd really like to explore this in more depth. For now, I'll just extract it. Give it a 9. Why not?
Do you feel the difference so far if we compare it with Terence, the videos I reacted from him? How many times he reset the priority of an element? Or just set it as here as an extract? I will say virtually never. And compare with James, it's almost virtually, every single repetition or extract he does, he may reset priorities. It's one of the factors, to simplify, one of the factors that differentiates a seasoned user, a user that perhaps could have used SuperMemo for even longer than the seasoned user, but just sticks to the basics, hasn't been familiar enough with incremental reading, and neglects priorities. He did more extracts.
Learning and memory. Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
Give me a 5.
So basically, in one single repetition, he's going through the entire article, and then he's chunking this through manual extracts, and then he's setting priorities. I don't care about this. This is not as much. I don't care about that, so I don't even extract it. That means that when he's done and apply done, those parts of the text that has not been exported will be deleted. It's one way to do it. It's a non-incremental way to do it. Yeah, I will not do that myself. It's way too much in one single repetition.
How?
This will be the flow. I have a video on that as well. How to read a book within an hour. If that's the flow you want to skim a book, could be an article if the article is long enough to skim that. But that's not the usual flow of incremental reading. Because keep in mind the title of the video is Incremental Reading Commentary. Yes, he's adding comments that he will not do in a genuine session, but it's an incremental reading. So it's on the verge.
How brains perform computation. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. How does a brain compute? I read this really good book by Melanie Mitchell. I think it was called Complexity, A Guided Tour. That was it. Melanie Mitchell. And I recommend it. It was super good. And she talked a little bit about computation in... She talked a little bit about... I recommend it. It was super good.
Melanie Mitchell. Okay.
And she talked a little bit about computation in living things. And it was really interesting. For example, one of the items I had from that book was like DNA encodes. DNA is like a programming language, but it also encodes its own interpreter inside of itself. So it encodes like...
Oh wow, such a good way to put it in a very few words.
The ribosomes and all of the stuff that interprets the DNA along with it. And I thought that was super interesting. A lot of analogies there to be made between computation, digital.
That's also a rule of thumb. So once you're able to use analogies for different concepts, it's a good level of assessment that you really understand that. Unless the analogy you do is actually wrong. Analogies are super, super useful. I really suggest to use them. Not just for your items necessarily, for your incremental reading, your learning in general. So even if you don't want to output, to share this to anyone, it's just for yourself, you can still use analogies. When you make abstractions, you relate, hey, this that it's new to me, I relate to this other concept that I already know. And it's like this, is analogous in this and that, through an analogy or even metaphor. Sometimes when it's more metaphorical is when the images are more useful, because they act like a peg to represent this metaphor. And now with AI, it's a lot easier to do.
Computation. And
let me know if you want some examples, and I'll do some video about that.
Just computation in the abstract general sense of, biological organisms, algorithms, everything. Very interesting. Yes, there we go. I'm sure all of that history is so much, has so much interesting stuff in it. But this is the real gold.
That's the golden nugget you came from.
The golden nuggets right here. Computational neuroscience. Analogies to be made between electronic computers and the brain. Information theory. What is information? How do we process it? Is the brain an information processing system? Cybernetics. Computational neuroscience. Ah, shit.
Evaluation of knowledge. Now this sparked a lot. This is golden nugget material. That means very high priority. And something he's doing also is to ask those questions. Now he's verbalizing this. Those questions is also a skill. It's not that, I just learn what I want and then do the flashcards and remember the answers. Asking good questions isn't a skill, an extremely useful skill. Because this will be the stepping stone, the vehicle you will use to get more knowledge through those open questions.
I got too excited there and lost my place. Yeah, here we go. Yes, the action potential. See, We're getting more about the action potential. I've definitely heard these names before. Huxley, I think Katz as well.
Doesn't ring a bell for me. But the thing is that, hey, this is relevant. So perhaps I heard those names or I have seen it in something I haven't extracted, but I read that in a topic before. So I didn't pay attention, but now that I see that is, yeah, I think something related to neuroscience, those names appeared. So now I see that those are relevant. Perhaps before I didn't care. Now I do, or at least more than before. So now that there are hyperlinks to Wikipedia pages, it will be more likely than before that I check those and see what their research or what they published about this, because they say culminating work. They did something that was big enough, relevant enough in this field of science.
The great topmost sheet of the mass, that where hardly a light had twinkled or moved, becomes now a sparkling field of rhythmic flashing points.
Haring theater and... Oh my god, this English is quite complicated. So I know it's old-fashioned because that was written like 80 years ago, but oh my god.
It's a really nice way of putting it. I wonder if with this part, the great topmost sheet of the mass, I wonder whether with the mass he's referring to the brain and the great topmost sheet as the neocortex. I've heard like the neocortex just described as this like sheet around the brain. I wonder if that's it.
One of the cases that now you can ask AI to double check that. If you don't want to spend time through the source, because this is just a fraction, it's just an excerpt.
Yeah.
And since AI now with language models is so quick, you could do it on the spot. Let's actually do it. So again, I'm lazy, so I will just do a screenshot. So I have this, and what does topmost sheet refers to? Refers to cerebral cortex. And the second response. So he asked if it was neocortex. But neocortex is the part of the brain involving higher order brain functions and sensory. Seems like it's not the same thing. The almost layer of the brain. So let me actually ask this. Is the topmost sheet part of the brain the same as the neocortex? Yes, the topmost sheet part of the brain, as referred in Charles Sherrington's description, is essentially the same as the neocortex. Both terms refer to the upper layer of the cerebral cortex. So he was right. And if I do really care, keep in mind AI can make mistakes. I will fact check that. For me now, this is enough.
Yeah, here we go. Neural networks. Very cool. Neural algorithms. Even single neurons appear to be complex and capable of performing computations. Awesome. 4. That's top quality stuff.
Even higher priority than before, that was 5.
My god. Ah, brain is food. Damn. That's horrible. Wow. My goodness. Right. As for the rest of the article, not so interested. There is good stuff in there. I'll leave it, but I'll deprioritize it. It's not the main stuff that I wanted to get from there.
30, okay. So something it's a good practice that, okay, there is still some value, but it's like the Pareto principle. I have gotten 80% of the value ready, and then the 20% remaining is just diminishing returns. I will have to invest more and more time to get lower and lower value, because it's just the remaining value that is left. So the best and heavier golden nuggets have been picked up already. Something I also noticed is that when he resets priorities, he uses round numbers. 5, 10, 70, 50, 30. Okay, it's more heuristically. His collection is slightly bigger than my current collection. That is 55,000, I think. And his collection is like 70,000. So that means that he will require a little more precision than I do, because the collection is slightly larger. But he seems that for him, just super round, this works for him.
Sleep, senses, and computation, especially computation. So 30, that makes sense. Let's go.
And that's an example of something that he did before. So we know now that this arrow means these his own words. Reframe this in terms of human semantic learning, physical training. To what parts of its environment is the organism, system, organization adapting? This comes from adaptation in natural and artificial systems, an introductory analysis with applications to biology, control, artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence. Okay. How does the environment act upon the adapting organism? What structures are undergoing adaptation? What are the mechanisms of adaptation? What part of the history of its interactions with the environment does the organism retain? What limits are there to the adaptive process? And how are different hypotheses about adaptive process is to be compared? So those are exploring questions. This is not a flashcard that you will complete the answer, make the constellation, and that's it. You're exploring this topic. Those topics that they relate to each other. You don't know yet.
I'm wondering whether I should try and explain the idea behind this, since this could really just send me off on a tangent or just devolve into incoherence and just me blubbering on about something I don't really understand. But
don't understand yet. That's a good point. So now this requires a very deep thought, right? It's not something that you can passively do. That's why sometimes the incrementalism wins, in the sense that I will just do very small actions. One action, one memory. One memory, one action. This is massive. This is way too taxing. So his repetitions are too long, are not atomic. He's doing way too many things in one single rep. So now in the next repetition, he comes from sleep in the brain. Now he gets this adaptation in the next repetition. And now he will have to invest 20 minutes, 10 minutes on that. That seems like a tangent. If you do one action, one memory, you will be changing topics. Pam, 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 interleaving. So it doesn't seem to be like a tangent because you're not focusing on a single topic per se.
I was interested in adaptation in just the abstract. So the whole idea was that when you learn, you're just making modifications to some cell assemblies in your brain, right? You're just modifying the strength.
The what?
Cell assemblies in your brain, right? You're just
Assemblies, okay.
modifying the strengths of connections between different neurons and so on. And in physical training, you're sort of doing the same thing, right?
Here you go, an analogy, by the way.
Let's say you go to the gym and you do some bodybuilding, right? You're going to be doing your bicep curls, breaking down those muscles.
Not necessarily bodybuilding, can be just strength training, by the way.
And they get repaired. You're making just progressive changes to the muscle structure over time. And so both of those two instances were so similar to me that I figured that you could treat them as sort of the same thing. Just adaptation in the abstract would just be progressive changes to some structure, organic structure perhaps, over time. No, I suppose not, since you could similarly talk about it in terms of computers, neural networks, artificial intelligence as well. So it was just, can you reframe like some of these things in terms of this abstract theory just based on
That's an excellent practice. So even if you already have sites flashcards for all of this content, then you want to phrase it as compared to this, the physical training or other domains. So you ask the same question, but with a very different perspective. Because it's analogous, it's the same, or it's more metaphorical. This helps a lot. This is very high level of loading, let's say. This is, let's say, the most costly cards to do, but are the most beneficial.
adaptation amongst can you reframe it in
And if you never do your own flashcards, you will never do those kinds of flashcards. This is impossible to do it in behalf of someone else, because you don't know what the other person already knows. Or perhaps you will even disagree, because at some degree there's some subjectivity and some belief system. So one analogy that for me works, perhaps it doesn't for you, and the other way around. So it's very personal. So if I download the shared deck in Anki, I will never see this. This is, among other things, how limited it is to have the knowledge from someone else. You have to make it your own.
in more abstract terms, and then look at like what the similarities and differences would be between these different systems. Could we learn anything about that? So I found this guy, John H. Holland, right? I think he's pretty famous for doing genetic algorithms, perhaps. And he's written this book, Adaptation in Natural and Artificial Systems, an Introductory Analysis with Applications to Biology, Control, and Artificial Intelligence. And he's just framed, I think he's basically just answering pretty directly this question, like, how can we just study adaptation in itself, not attached to anything concrete, and then look at what the implications are for those for the applications. And so what I wanted to do was to reframe myself. These were sort of questions he posed almost, I think it was in the introduction. So to what parts of its environment is the organism, system, organization adapting? So it's like, in his abstract theory, there's an organism, system, or organization, and it's adapting. And it's adapting to a part of its environment. So I was going to try and reframe that in terms of, reframe it myself in terms of human semantic learning or physical training, like bodybuilding or whatever, right? And I figured that would give me it would prepare me for the later parts of the book, and it would also just maybe generate some original ideas about
Original ideas. Yeah. Because when you read the book, it's not just, I want to memorize this book, read all of the facts, and that's it. You want to get some out of it. So add your own, basically. Have something original that perhaps you needed this knowledge from the book. It's like some iterations that, so you have an expert. Then you have a newbie. Then you train, let's say you train that newbie, it becomes an apprentice. And then it gets the knowledge from the master, right? And this repeats, but eventually every every apprentice that becomes a master has added their own piece of knowledge, their own original ideas. And each time, each iteration, everyone adds a little more, right? So imagine this in today's standards that, well, doesn't have to be like this now. We have internet, so you can share to the world. Doesn't have to be face to face with someone. We're not limited to this. So you could get knowledge from James, from this author, John Holland, and thousands of people. And at the end of the day, is that you will add your own twist, something original, something that today AI cannot do. Because yes, I could read and memorize 2,000 books, being able to recall the facts like a savant if I want. But what will be the purpose of that if I cannot link this knowledge, apply this knowledge, and make original thoughts, original ideas, original projects, and so on.
Adaptation and why it's useful to study it both in abstract as well as concrete terms. So in terms of human semantic learning, the adapting organism.
Human semantic learning. To what parts of its environment is the organism, system, or organization adapting?
Maybe I should take these terms that occur in these questions and actually just map out what they actually mean within the concrete system. The adapting organism in human semantic learning surely is the human. I suppose if I didn't restrict it to human semantic learning, I mean, can animals learn semantic information? That's a good question. I'll leave it to the viewer to decide.
Okay.
But for now, let's just stick with human semantic.
There are some studies that some apes could be able to memorize and learn something, but I think that the thought process is a lot different. It's just a lot more based on imitation.
Learning. Okay, so the adapting organism in this case.
This repetition is way too long. Way too long. You should divide these in iterations. So you can also, it's also true you spend some time, then do a schedule later today. You'll do some repetitions and get back to this again. It's a lot in one single take.
Is the human, to what parts of it, of humans when they learn, what part of the environment are they adapting to? What is the environment? I think the environment is a set of environments. The environment itself is composed of many different environments.
Okay.
Sub-environments, let's say. I almost want to say that a commonality between all of the environments humans adapt to is that there is some resource constraint. And that's what you're progressively making changes to some structure over time in order to maximize the amount of resources you have. Is there any instance in humans existing in some environment where they are not looking to gain as many resources as possible. I almost feel like I've not really answered the question. Maybe I'm just answering something related but distinct. I almost feel like adaptation, change to some structure, is done in response to some change, right? The ability to adapt just means to change, and you are doing that in response to the environment itself, which changes. The environment changes, therefore we change. To what parts of it?
The environment changes, therefore we also change because we adapt to the environment. This implies a change. Yeah.
Environment is the organism adapting. The organism is adapting to those parts of its.
This shows that when you simplify the description, the narrative, this is super complex. This requires a lot of thinking. So there was one quote. I never created the element for that, but I remember seeing this. That I'm so sorry to write this long letter. It will be shorter if I had more time. That, wait a second. Shouldn't be the opposite? If you write a longer letter, this requires more time, right? But goes in that aspect that I need more time to make a meaningful, a more condensed, syntactic, and simple description writing. So even if you say environment change, therefore we also change as human, that's the summary. You have explained that in plain English and with very few words. So it's like the more simple you want the answer to be, the higher the difficulty, the more you will think, and more thought process required. If I want the opposite, I want to be quick, the quality will be lower and it will be a lot lengthy, a lot more verbose and less to the point. So not because it's very easy language means that, oh, that was a shortcut, I can do that anytime.
It's environment that.
And this is gold. This ability is one of the most important skills in incremental reading, by the way, and in learning in general. That's why we can know that James is a very versed incrementalist. Well, super memo reader, super memo user. I don't know, judging from this video, he doesn't seem to be that versed in incrementalism. He likes to go really long repetitions, but that's just a matter of taste at the end of the day. The skills are there, absolutely there.
Change. Yeah, I still feel like this is stated. It's not really getting at the concrete stuff.
And in some parts, if you struggle like he's doing, just move on. Doesn't have to be scheduled in 60 days. Could be tomorrow, or even later today after the nap if you want, or without the nap. And if you schedule this to later today, and you don't see it because you don't stop doing repetitions or not enough, and you will see it tomorrow. No big deal, and even better, you will be fresh. You'll have forgotten details, and you have learned something else because you have slept.
I like this. This is fun. I'll bump it up to 5.
So he put number 5. He did this several times because he uses round numbers for setting priorities. What happens? That only the last element will have the 5. The previous one that he set at 5 will be pushed up or down. So if you simplify priorities like that, he will have like, let's say the queue will be very similar. So if I put the range of 5 and 5.1% of the priority, it's very likely that those elements follow more or less the same order, kind of the order he set 5. Because then they will be pushed every time. So I will have from the most recent to the least recently applied 5 manually by him. Some other they will have 5 already, not because he did apply it, but in the average case, most of the time this will happen, especially the few chunk, the few 10, 20, depends on the size of your collection.
And continue. All right. I think that's it for me today.
And this is a question that I also raised that I don't know the answer. Why he decided to stop here? I don't see his status bar or stats bar, so I don't know his outstanding queue, but I'm pretty sure he's not done. Actually, in 44 minutes, he has done very few repetitions. At the beginning, actually, strictly speaking, was not even a repetition. He just imported the article from there. He imported the article from Dick Foley, the high jumper guy. That was not a repetition. I think he did, like, no kidding, 5 repetitions overall, strictly speaking, that are logged as such, as repetitions, about 5. And perhaps the few ones that he's kept, let's put 10 or 15. It's not much, to be honest, based on the time. Why? Because he spends a lot of time per repetition. So going back, why he decided to stop here? Is he tired? He thinks that he cannot add any value in this video anymore? Is he sleepy? I don't know. Why, when you do decide to stop, when you are free, you have no constraint?
It was actually a really good session, actually. In particular, the Posbury flop discovery was
Serendipity. Serendipity always leaves this positive feeling.
pretty cool. That was a real, I don't know, that was a real discovery. That was really cool because I've been wondering that for a long time, like how the meta changes and where the drive to change the meta comes from and how does it end up changing. And yeah, so that was a really good discovery. And yeah, exploring the adaptation thing, that was cool as well. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this session.
I did. And I had to stop because I needed to nap and work in between. Not because I didn't want to keep going. Because turned out that I was already 2 hours and a half in for the first, 20 minutes or so of the video. Which I didn't thought that it will take that long.
I hope it wasn't boring.
Nope.
But if it was, let me know. Like, I want to hear if it was boring. Like,
the opposite.
I have ideas for, I think I mentioned this in the introduction, but whatever, I'll say it again. I have a bunch of ideas for content related to supermemo and quantified learning and learning with spaced repetition systems in general, incremental reading, incremental learning, all of that stuff. So
so do I in the future.
Like, I want to make videos on actually like programming projects, like I can't it's difficult to show with the virtual machine, but hang on, if I was like just over here doing my programming and maybe I'm focusing on the programming and then importing items, showing you how I import items from my programming projects into SuperMemo actually while I'm working on a project, and sort of the tools that I've been developing as well. Like I've got a whole bunch of plugins and stuff that I haven't released yet because they're all in kind of a broken state.
And it's kind of sad that that was never released. I think perhaps he did in Git, but it will be super obscure that it's not documented, so you don't know what it's doing or what are the requirements to install it and all of that. Yeah, even if that is public, which I'm not entirely sure.
State at the moment.
And he no longer uses SuperMemo, or not to the same extent, I don't know. He used RepNote as his main app. But yeah, though there are a lot of golden nuggets in his videos.
But they will gradually be approaching completion. So there's a huge, endless depths of stuff to talk about with SuperMemo, and whatever you're interested in, just let me know in the comments or on Twitter. You can follow me at experilearning. So that's EXPIRI. I'll put it in the description. Anyway.
Yeah, that's an example of a skill that you don't need, that could be spelling. If it's not required, you will be bad at it, but you want to spend your time and build the skills that you actually will apply. So that's the entire video. I think the comments doesn't add much. How you resize the Edge browser. Yeah, that he did. Yeah. Thanks for being post. Awesome. Looking forward for the next videos. And off topic, how you manage collections is in SuperMemo. Oh, that is like just from 5 months ago. I was not answered. No, it does not harm your performance in SuperMemo. What could harm, well not harm, but take longer is the repair collection and everything that scales linearly with the size of the collection. And how do you manage? You will do this with concepts, the short answer. So that's all. Awesome video. I hope that I also added my 2 cents in this video. My, yet again, long 2 cents. And yeah, I will react to the next commentary, therefore, so see you incrementally.